Tonight we'll go back in time to seasons past when 22 men graced the rugged fields of yesterday, fighting for one more first down, one more yard gain, one final score that would bring victory after 60 minutes of battle on the gridiron. Tonight we'll explore the world of Gridiron Greats. Welcome to Gridiron Greats Football History and its Memorabilia on the Sports History Network in conjunction with Swick Enterprises, and we're live from the Southport, North Carolina home of Gridiron Greats magazine. I'm Bob Swick, publisher and editor of Gridiron Greats magazine, and I'll be your host for the show. Gridiron Greats is the only publication in America that focuses upon the history and memorabilia of the North American football game since its inception in 1869. We cover 150 plus years of football history and memorabilia, and you can find us on the web at gridirongreatsmagazine.com. It's at this time I'd like to introduce my special guest co-host. He's a senior contributing writer to Gridiron Greats magazine, a football, memorabilia, and card collector, and historian that has one of the most advanced collections of football cards and memorabilia in the country, especially pre-World War II items, in particular the 1925 Pottsville Maroons. He's well known to our audience. I'd like to welcome again Mr. Jeff Payne. Jeff, welcome to the show this evening.
Hey, Bob, it's great to be here. Really looking forward to the chat tonight. This is going to be fun.
And Jeff, I'm going to lead off. I hear there's something going on with the Pottsville Maroons that you and a good friend of ours, Darren Hayes, have been involved in. I'll hand it off to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob. So this is a worldwide exclusive announcement right here on Gridiron Greats podcast. Bob gets the exclusive rights. I'm happy to announce the publication of a new book on the Pottsville Maroons. Many people on this show know that 2025 is the 100th anniversary of what the Pottsville community calls the Stolen NFL Championship, as they call it. And it seemed like the perfect time to write what we hope is considered the definitive book on the Pottsville Maroons, going all the way back to their history in the 1800s. I wrote it with acclaimed, I would say, football historian and author Darren Hayes, who's a good friend of this show. He's a member of our joint vintage football community. He's written several books himself. This was my first book, so I learned a lot from Darren in this process. The book is called Marooned: The Rise, the Fall, the Redemption of the NFL's Pottsville Maroons. And it covers the entire history of Pottsville football, all the way back to the 1800s, all the way through the rise of the Maroons and their playing for what appeared to be the NFL championship game in 25, which they won. The fall of the Maroons, as they were subsequently kicked out of the league for playing an exhibition game that there's a lot of controversy around. And then the redemption, as Joe Zacco, a longtime Pottsville Maroons supporter, fought to try to get the championship back in the 60s and the 70s, and his family carried that on, and the Pottsville community still carries that on today. So it covers the entire end-to-end story, and I'm really excited to see what people think of it.
Now, I got one quick question and then one observation or one comment. You uncovered several years ago some incredible history of the Maroons. Yes. And if you could share with our audience, I know we talked about it at a previous podcast years ago. You did basically a dumpster dive to salvage some really incredible historical pieces that were ready to go into the garbage. Tell us about that.
Yeah, and that's the genesis for my piece of the book. Darren gets all the credit for all the research he did because he was starting pretty much from scratch. I mean, he came to me with this idea and he said, "Hey, I know you got a lot on the Maroons. I don't, but if you'll share what you have, I will dig in and I will, cover pieces of the story that that you feel like, makes sense for me to cover." And he did an awesome job doing that. But my piece of the story, and I really focused on kind of pre 1924. So the early days, all the way back to the
Okay.
1800s. And I focused on the resurrection, which was when Possible realized they were not the champions, which they
Right,
had always
right.
assumed they were. All that transpired through the years and decades to try to get the championship back. And a lot of that information, as you mentioned, Bob's never been published before. And it came from three sources. So first was, I was fortunate enough to pick up a very large lot of paper documents and information from Joe Zacco's estate. He
Mhm.
was the longtime Maroons advocate that pushed for the reestablishment of their championship. His estate, unfortunately, escaped the family, got out into the wild. But one of the people who had picked up a lot of that sold a lot of it about 10 years ago. And there was this, and there, a lot of the good stuff was parceled out and sold separate. But
Mhm.
in this auction that happened, I think it was Leland's, there were these two huge plastic Tupperware tubs full of paper. And all it said was, documents from Zacco's estate. They showed like two things. They were not impressive. And I was like, I'm going to get that. I don't know what's in there, but I want to dig through it and see what's in there. So I bought those. And I think that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was instrumental in both of those pieces, the rise up front and the redemption story. I found lots of great nuggets in there. It was definitely worthwhile. An interesting twist is that I contacted descendants of Joe Zacco through Facebook group and actually got to his granddaughter, talked to his granddaughter, talked to his grandson, and actually talked to one of his sons who's 95 years old and only lives 30 minutes from me. And
Wow.
they were astounded that this stuff had survived because they thought once it escaped the family, it was long gone.
Right.
But one thing that came out of those interactions, I had always heard a rumor that Joe Zacco was writing a book on kind of the Maroons. And it was just a rumor out there. But I got wind of a couple of years ago that there was a manuscript floating around out there from another hobbyist and tracked down his granddaughter. And in talking to her and whatnot, I mentioned the manuscript and she said, I actually have a copy of that manuscript. In fact, I have the manuscript.
Wow.
It was not sold off. She was gracious enough. I arm twisted her, but she was gracious enough to share a copy with me so I could read it and just fact check what I had and compare it to what he wrote up in this manuscript. And we used that to fill in a few holes in the book, which was totally cool because that is unpublished information right from Joe Zacco's mouth about what he saw happen during this period of time. And that was a gem in terms of research finding.
The purest thing about, the whole episode of you getting the material and then getting the manuscript, then getting, writing the book is the actual history of this team has been preserved. And again, I pick on the NFL all the time. That was one of the most significant parts of NFL history that is basically they're oblivious to it one way or the other. Like it didn't exist. That was a long time ago. That was 100 years ago. So we don't have to, we don't have to worry about it. And that's wrong. And again, you guys did an incredible service to the hobby and the history of the game. More importantly, by preserving it and preserving and creating a story of what actually happened then with memorabilia from that time frame. So I am beyond impressed. I'm speechless to a large degree. And again, when Darren mentioned to me what you guys were doing a while ago, because I did a couple of Darren podcasts on the Packers there, I just said, I'm glad you did it because you are, to me, one of the few experts on that team, and having the memorabilia to go along with understanding the history of what happened at that time. And again, we got to preserve the history of the game. I don't care what anybody says. It's
and
not
the
a
book is
it's
the
not
book
a
is chock full of pictures. So one thing Darren and I were in agreement was, one, we wanted to tell the whole story. There's been other Possible Maroons books published, a couple books. I've read them many times, both of them. Wanted to do a more comprehensive kind of front to back. Those books don't cover the entire story.
Right.
And also, there's some pictures in those books, but given the archive I have, we put a boatload of pictures in there. There is a lot of things to look at in the book, which is awesome.
That's great. That's great. Well, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm sure our audience are looking forward to it. And at the end of the show, we'll tell everybody where you can order it, and hopefully people will be buying it and reading it and preserving the history of that team. Very critical part of NFL history. I think it's really fitting. You guys did it. I'm proud to know you guys, and we go back a lot of years with this venture of whatever it is we're doing in preserving the game and preserving the memorabilia of the game. And this, I think, is just a great accomplishment for the hobby, which sadly is just not well known. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not a PSA 10 2024 Panini something. That
Can't
is
put it in a
one of
slab.
5 that I gotta have and hold on to it and then flip it as fast as possible. And and not being I'm trying not to be sarcastic, but I can't help it. It's just so much more important than that, and that's what it's all about. I commend you guys very much, and I look forward to reading the book. But all right, we're gonna move on because our special guest is here tonight, and I'd like to introduce him to our audience. Our special guest is an advanced collector of early Super Bowl programs, tickets, and photos, and also the 1972 Sunoco football stamps. His collection has just been featured in the current issue of Gridiron Greats magazine as our super collector. He hails from Newtown, Pennsylvania. A good friend of ours, Mr. Steve Crane. Steve, welcome to the show this evening.
Thanks, Bob. Very happy to be here, and happy to be here with you too, Jeff. And look forward to a great night of football talk.
Well, we're looking forward to it, and thanks for taking time out of your schedule and coming on. And I'd like to start off by asking, can you tell our audience how you got interested in collecting football cards and football memorabilia?
Sure. So my football collecting started back in the early 1970s. I grew up in central Jersey with 2 older brothers and a very sports centric family, all sports. But football was one that we just shared together every Sunday, watching on TV and the game of the week. Or in particular, we loved that show This Week in the NFL with Pat Summerall and Tom Brookshire, with all the great NFL films, music, and slow motion, and Sam Bam Cunningham busting through the line, and Alan Page and the Purple People Eaters. So it was a fun time. I felt that was just such great childhood memories of watching all of the great teams in the early 70s. And so like most families with kids that have extra energy and need to put it somewhere, we collected football and other sports, but we really loved football. And we would go down to the Five and Dime, shake our parents down for enough to get a pack and do chores or so the like. And so we had boxes full of them. We would read the backs of the cards like you do, look at them, imagine, one day being able to, go see the stars and so forth. And so we collected a lot of the top sets of the day. And as I'll speak about later, a special set near and dear to my heart, the Sunoco set in 1972. And we collected in earnest through the 70s, and then as you get older and you get involved in other athletic and social things, you tend to kind of move a little bit or put it on hold for a while, and that's what I did. And then as I got settled in my career and family, and was fortunate enough to have some disposable income to play with, I kind of went back to it, and I said to myself, we've always collected a lot, and with my older brother, and I said, I'm going to do what I really want to collect here. And I always liked football the best. You like baseball, you like some of the other sports too, but I said that's my sport. So yeah, I just went full into it, and I started back looking at some of the sets that I thought were caught my eye the most, that I really enjoyed, like the 1965 tall boy. That was one of the ones that just always wanted to collect. In 1969, where they had the two different series, the the full shot, and then the kind of half one with the borders, and
Yeah.
and that was a neat one. And then I, of course, went to the year that kind of was the most special to me, which was 1972. So I put together a really high grade set. I think it was number one at one point for a few years, and then
Wow.
I said, well, the whole thing, the PSA, I love it. I like collecting high end, super high end collections, but I got tired of trying to get the next
Yeah.
best one of one, and fighting all these people and paying exorbitant amounts for low pop commons. And I said, I'm gonna do something that no one's ever done, and I'm gonna collect the set that I always had the most fun collecting, which was the 1972 Sunoco set. And so I put that together, which we'll talk about, and also then later, one of the other pieces of the hobby that always intrigued me was Super Bowl tickets, and in the game, the Super Bowl game. And that's some of the best memories that our family had, watching those with
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah.
And I mean, no matter who it is on the street, you talk about the Super Bowl, and they have a story. Oh, I was here, I went to my aunt's house, my brother-in-law's, and we you remember when we saw that. No, it's just such a great kind of culmination of sports in America. And so for me, I said I want to focus on that. And so as my collecting has evolved over the years, and I've aged, I'm and listening to you two speak about even much further in the past about the game and the Pottsville Maroons and other teams back then. I said, I want to preserve what I can, which, maybe will someday do some good for people that, have an interest in going back in time, and looking at, things, and wondering, wow, I've never seen those. I mean, and I can remember when I collected, the Sunocos, I was getting those graded for the first time. So I had to work with PSA for, countless hours, and conversations with them on how to, the slots, and oh no, this is an update. This is not
Right.
the
Right.
regular player, and
Right.
I had to send them proof. But I remember one of the customer service people, telling me, she's like, these are some of the coolest, pictures I've ever seen of
Yeah.
football players. I've never seen these before. So,
Yeah.
that was good. And it made me think that, yeah, maybe there is going to be, an audience for this that will bring them back, and preserve it. So that's kind of how my collecting has evolved, and my overall focus right now.
Great.
Totally resonate with that, Steve. I mean, starting in the early 70s myself, You're a great guest, by the way. You hit on the tall boys for Bob, which was that was a kudo, and you hit Sam Bam Cunningham for me with my Patriots. So you sure do know how to keep the host in the conversation. But I'd love to hear more about the 72 Sunocos. I love that set.
Yep.
And you kind of got me into it by just posting all the fantastic items you have from that set and that series. Can you talk more about that set, the challenges in that set, the different forms you have it in, the individual stamps, graded, raw, uncut sheets, albums? Tell us more about that whole collection, because that's a set that I don't think a lot of collectors know a lot about. And it's just really, as you mentioned, just great images in that set.
Yeah, absolutely. So this set came out. It was the largest marketing promotion at the time by Sunoco DX in conjunction with the NFL properties. And one thing that's important from the history of it is, I think it was right around 1969 or so. Topps lost the license rights with NFL to use their logos
Right.
on their cards. And that stood all the way until 1982. So any top set you look at, and when I went back and I tried to study a little bit of this history, I said, no, that couldn't be. I remember, collecting those cards in school and trading them, and then I looked and I said, wow, that's right. Every helmet has been airbrushed out. And, you can't see any of the logos on the helmets. So it was odd. But in any event, the Sunoco set came out in 1972 by Sunoco DX. And they basically had it as a promotion at their gas stations to help get people interested in the game of professional football, and also buy gas at their local pumps, and of which we had one less than a mile away. Good for us, bad for our parents. So what they did, they had two separate albums, and one, I'll just grab one here, is the Savor album, and then another was a deluxe album. This one was 56 pages, and the other was 128 pages.
Right.
And inside the album, they had all the teams had. The 12 players on offense and defense, with their name, number, position, height, weight, and where they're from, what college, and then of the 26 teams in the NFL at the time. So that's 624 stamps that would go in here. And also in these albums, they had some starter stamps that came with it. It was 144 to be exact, just to get you started and interested in trying to put together the set. And when you would go fill up your tank at the gas station, they would give you a few of these 9 stamp packets. There were 4 of them. One with the Cowboys, one with the Dolphins, one with the Eagles, and one with the Jets. And when you open those up, they had little perforations on the ends of each of those. They would yield 9 stamps, 9 player stamps, and then you would detach those carefully, or when you're a kid you would just rip them any way you can, lick them and put them in your book. And you tried to get all of those to complete your album. So that gave you the base set of 624. And one of the things that happened then, later during the season, is Sunoco came out with team sheets, which tried to have all 24 players. But what they did is they also came up with an update set, and that had featured 82 players that were traded to during the season to a team, or were called up from the bench and became a starter. And so they had they call them late player changes, and I actually have one of the forms that they would hand out
Wow.
at
Wow.
at the gas station. And here it was, a person would complete this form and send it with a return address to NFL Stamp Fulfillment Center in Des Plaines, Illinois. This one, which I was really happy to get, was actually completed by a gentleman in Boynton Beach, Florida. And inside here, it has all of the players, and you would check off which player you wanted. A little hard to see
Wow.
there, but which player you wanted, and or if you wanted a complete team, and then you mailed it with I think it was $1. Stamps were 2 cents each, and a team sheet was $1, and the deluxe saver album was 350, and the saver was $1.25.
Wow.
And you sent this in, and unfortunately the deadline was April 1st 52 years ago, so
Can't send it in now.
1973. So that created an additional collecting kind of subset for this mass production of the players. So the interesting thing about this, and I'll show you one of the team sheets. Here's an example of a team sheet. This is the
Okay.
Minnesota Vikings. You'll see at the bottom there's two players here, John Gilliam and Mike Ishad, who are new players. Those
Right.
players replaced two players that were in these packets and listed in those albums. So one would say, well, if I'm collecting this set, maybe the easiest thing to do is just to go try to buy 24 of these team sheets. Well, these team sheets are very hard to find in the hobby, almost extinct. When they are, they're not in great condition. And then I would have the whole set, but you wouldn't. You still would need 82 players that you could only get from these packets. So that created a real challenge in putting together the set in high grade, which is what I did. And so some may call it a little crazy, but I said to myself, I'm going to do two things here. I'm going to preserve the history of this set, and by having them slabbed, now I'm not sure I would do that with the price of PSA's, grading, but I was able to do it early on in that decade of 2010 before COVID to 2019, and take advantage of maybe $6 a grading fee or so. But I submitted probably about 1,000 stamps to get my set where it is. And some of what I have is I have a very high grade set, all 624 regular stamps graded. I think the overall grade's 9.24.
Wow. Wow.
So yeah, in terms of statistics, I think there's maybe about 234 PSA 10s and about 320 PSA 9s, and the rest are 8s, and I only need 5 that I have in 7 to have a set completely in PSA 8. But
Wow.
it's a neat set, and it's a set that has 73 professional football Hall of Famers. There's no
Yeah.
set. I've looked, and maybe some of the viewers can, double check me on this, but I don't know of any other set that's been published that has that many Canton and Shriney's. And so I have that, and then I have the update set too of all 82, and that's also in, I think, a higher than mint grade, and then the other piece that I thought would be neat to collect on this was to see if I could amass a complete collection of all 26 team sheets. And I have 25 of them. The only one I did not have is the Oakland Raiders, but I was
Raiders.
able to, as far as these go, they're very difficult to get, but the two most difficult are the Bears and the Raiders. And our own Steve Galata from VFC was, really gracious to sell me the Bears one a few years ago. And he has a lead on the Raiders one, but it's a diehard silver and black collector who
Mm.
does not want to part with it unless
Yeah.
there's something that he likes for his silver and black collection. And I haven't been able to come up with anything yet for him. So
Steve,
So
yeah,
I can ask a quick question
yeah,
because I'm curious about it. And I know we talked about this in the magazine. How
yeah.
many individual different 9 stamp sheets are there? Do you know how many are there?
Now that question I do not know, I didn't
Okay,
research, but I know Ken Marks did a lot of
right,
research on that, and I think he had the answer to it. To me, and he had all of the math, as to the different variations of those
right.
sheets. I did not go that far into
Okay,
wanting to also collect every variation of the booklet, 9-player booklet stamps. But one of the other things that I found along the way that I thought was really interesting with respect to these, booklets that were handed out is I found two people, and this is in 15 years, that actually possessed these sheets that they had been printed by the printing company but had not been folded. So
okay,
I thought that was really unique, that they were completely flat, had not been folded, and also the fact that they could yield, really, high grade stamps for these particular ones that you couldn't get on the team sheet, because those
right,
82 that I referred to of players that are on here but were replaced on the team sheet, they are so difficult to find in good condition because the paper that they used to print these and the process that they used was so crude to fold these over
right.
that it really makes it hard to detach these and find what I guess an independent grading company would consider a near mint to mint stamp. So that was one of the things, and I was able to buy probably about 40, no, actually more like 60 of those 9-panel sheets from this gentleman outside of Pittsburgh. And then I saw a person in Idaho come up, and he claimed to have all of the panels, which you if you bought that lot would yield all 624 stamps. But he
Okay,
wanted $2,000 for it, and I just at that
yeah.
stage I felt it was a little too high for me.
Yeah.
You know?
And there's not enough of demand to create that. I could see that for the updates, because over
Yeah,
the years I have seen very few either sheets, team
yeah,
sheets, and I think I have like 1 or 2 update stamps myself,
yeah,
as type pieces in my collection, and
yeah,
they are beyond rare as far as I'm concerned. And
yeah,
whatever happened to them, my theory is that they got dumped at when they weren't being sold,
yeah,
instead of being
yeah.
wholesaled out. They probably just threw them out, type of thing.
Yeah, and those
yeah.
are when you think about it, the updates only came on the team sheets, and the team sheets you could only obtain if you went through somewhat of a little bit
Right,
of an arduous process of
Yeah.
completing that late player change collection form and then sending it in with money and a stamped envelope with your
right,
return address. So not a lot of people are probably going to go to the trouble of that. So to your point, Bob, I think a lot of those team sheets probably went by the wayside. And the only one I have ever seen in 15 years of collecting this particular set when I embarked on completing it in a high grade form and then all of these sub pieces to it was at in a 2010 Mile High auction.
Okay.
Brian Drent auctioned off all of the team player sheets. It was all in 24 of them were in one lot.
Right.
Their sheet and the Raiders sheet
Raiders
were
sheet, yep,
auctioned off
yep.
by themselves. But I am holding out hope when we get to the segment of things I I'm always on the hunt for. That's one of
Yep.
my ultimate holy grails is getting that Raiders team sheet to complete that set. So I really enjoy this. I pull them out every once in a while and lay out the entire team of one and look at all the players. And it's just it's another good friend of mine in the industry I've known for a long time is the Mint State Rick Snyder, and who's down in Myrtle Beach, and now he used to be in Elgin, Illinois. And Rick and I talk from time to time, and he said, Steve, and he helped me put together the Tall Boy and a bunch of other ones, and he said, I think that'll be the last set you ever get rid of. And I said, yeah, you're right. There's no reason to. Why would I do that? And
Yeah.
um, so that's a little bit about that set. And I will say one last thing on that. It has grown a little bit in interest. The gentleman who I think was the collector of the year, he was the CEO of Schwab. What was it, Walt Bettinger? Was that his name?
Okay.
Yeah, he reached out to me at one point and asked to buy my set, but I thanked him, said I'm glad you have the same enthusiasm and interest I do, but I'll help you build it, but I don't want to part with mine. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And that's half the fun of collecting is actually building it, not buying the whole thing.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you just have it that. Well, that is incredible. You are one of the experts on that set. And I want to move over a little to your
Sure.
other items that are incredible. Tell us about the Super Bowl tickets, programs, and photos.
So, as I mentioned before, the Super Bowl to me is it's the culmination of, the what every football player hopes to play in and win. And, when you compare this amongst even all of the other sports that we have, there's not one that has one game that decides everything and it's
Right.
only one game. Every other one series, hockey, right? Basketball, World Series. And so unless you get the game 7 or the deciding game, this is it. And it's grown from what I guess was just a not a publicity stunt, but really kind of well, we got this substandard league of the AFL trying to flex their muscles. Let's have them see how they do against the old guard in the NFL in
Yeah.
1967, and to a almost 60% filled LA Coliseum, to now it's just a spectacle that kind of is grown to be more than even just the game itself. It's a whole day of celebration. So
Right.
I started this uh, probably about maybe 7 years ago or 8 years ago is when I said, well, this is something I've always looked at, and let me just see. And I happened to see on eBay perusing, someone had a Super Bowl 8 ticket. It was one of the Dolphins. I think it might have been the Dolphins' second win against the
Okay.
Vikings.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So I bought the ticket. I said, let me just see what these look like. And so it wasn't expensive. It may have been $125 or $150 for a PSA 9, And I got this ticket and I looked at it and I was just blown away. I said, wow, this is like a piece of art. I said, this is just spectacular. And it made me, looking at the ticket and I'm thinking back and I'm like, I watched that game with my parents and my brothers. And, we remember talking about it. I remember my dad vividly saying to us, well, that's the end of that dynasty. So why is that? They said they're breaking the team up. There's this World Football League coming,
Yeah.
and Kick, Warfield, and Zonka are gone. And I was like, what? I said, I love this team. I was just getting to like the Dolphins, and they're like, nope, they're gone. And so so that's that was a memory to me, and I had a real connection to it, and I started to read a little bit more of the articles about ticket collecting too, and I said, I said I really want to do this, and so when I looked at the daunting task of getting all Super Bowl tickets in full, it seemed impossible. And sometimes when you look at assembling sets, you say to yourself, well, is this something that I could even complete? Is it worth it? I mean, because you have to have enough inventory around to get people interested to think they may be able to complete a set too. And then I said, well, I may not be able to get those really rare ones, Super Bowl 2, 3, and 12, I think are the three most
Right.
rare in full. I said, but you know what? That's okay. I said, why don't I try to get fulls where I can, and then I'll try to get a really nice ticket stub for those, and we'll just see what happens. And I kept growing and growing. And then during COVID, I made some really nice, friendly connections with a few people that were, longtime collectors and very high up on the registry that were, just going through their things because you had all this time on your hands with your family, and they, there's this guy out in Chicago, Doug Mayer, and he Cubs win '08 is his moniker, and he collected. He had quite a few, and he was getting rid of his doubles. And one man's trash is another man's treasure. I said,
Oh,
oh, I'll be so happy to get an authentic one or a PSA one with the stain. I don't care. It's a
yeah.
full ticket, and there's only 20 of them. So I was able to secure some of the really good ones from him, and then we had a good connection because he went to Rutgers, my wife went to Rutgers, and then I lived in Chicago for a little time, and so we was meeting someone new in the hobby and helping each other out. So I assembled a collection of all 58 of the Super Bowls in full form and all graded.
Wow.
So there's
Wow.
only four of those in existence, people that have ever done that, two that had their sets retired. So it's a pretty tough thing to do. It really is. And then over and above that, while I was doing this and enjoying it, and I just love looking at those tickets. I have to say they're probably, without question, one of the pride and joys of my entire collecting experience. And I actually, it was even with discussions with Jeff. He's like, "Yeah, do you ever think about programs?" And I said, "Yeah, I looked at those, but I'm not quite sure." And then I picked one up and I said, yeah, that's kind of neat. I said, why don't I send one in and see what it looks like when it's graded? And lo and behold, I said, wow, these are really neat. And look, how neat would that be to have a ticket and the program? I mean,
Yeah.
that's what a person does when they go to a Super Bowl. They have their ticket, they have the program, they look through the program and they read all of it and so forth, and the advertisements, everything about it. And so I decided I would, assemble a graded Super Bowl program with CGC, which I've done, and so now I have all 58 programs graded as well. And my ultimate goal is to have everyone in 9.0 or better. I have, I think, 5 or 4 that I just have to upgrade. But right now, I'm
Wow.
really, really close to that goal. And along the way in that process, I think I may have shown both of you and some of the members in our community. Last year I was able to make what I think is probably my greatest fine story of a lifetime. I saw this, and there's a backstory to this, but I saw this uh, auction on eBay. It was on eBay, believe it or not,
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
Gainer Consignment, and it's up in, I think, New England. And I know they're very good. They're very thorough in what they do, and I've bought from them before and really trust and respect them. So I saw this. It was a kit, a little box, a kit from NFL Properties Inc. marketing group. And inside this box was featured, it was a letter on gold emblem, NFL in perfect condition, discussing, it was given out to one of the, clients, I guess, of a friend of NFL, family. And it said,
Right.
oh, I'd like to, let you know about, here's, in so many words here, these are some of the publications our marketing group has been working with and in partnering with some of the corporate sponsors, Kimberly Clark, Coca-Cola, and so forth. And enclosed is a Super Bowl one program for the most recently played Super Bowl, because it was dated in the fall of, after the Super Bowl took place.
Right.
And
Right.
then here's some of our other new publications where it had Legends of the Gridiron and all these
Oh,
different, really neat gladiators. And so I looked at it and I said, wow, that's one of the nicest looking Super Bowl one programs I've ever seen in my life. In the description, he said, look, I think this could very well be the highest graded one. So I said, if you even chose to do that. So I bid hard on it. I said, no, I want to get this and I want to preserve it. So I bought it, I sent it in, and it came back CGC 9.8, the one of
wow.
one. It's the highest graded ever Super Bowl one
Wow.
program, and I
Wow.
don't think there'll ever be one that'll ever top that. So I actually have it here, which I'd like to show you. This is the actual program itself. It's uh
Wow.
it's pretty amazing. And when I said to Steve Galata, this is sorry for the reflection, but it came up 9.8. He said impossible. And but the neat story was I went to the Philly show this last outing, and saw Steve Wolf and Mike McKee, and Mike said that he was offered. I started telling the story about it, and he said he was offered that lot before it went public. But he said, I wasn't a Super Bowl collector, so I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you
Yeah.
you allowed another VFCer to get that. So that's basically what I've done as far as the Super Bowl program assembly. And then I also you know ventured off a little bit more into another rabbit hole, but this one I'm not going to do all 58 Super Bowls. I wanted to get a type 1 photo of the first 10 Super Bowls as a a memory to add to. I thought it'd be neat to have the ticket, the program, an authentic type 1 photo, and get it encapsulated, which to me is, in particular for the photos, has nothing to do with the grade. It's all about just preserving that and authenticating it and having it in a safe, well kept piece of plastic that no one could get to. So I did that, and I I have here's an example of one. This is just a beautiful shot of Super Bowl one with Otis Taylor. This is him catching the only touchdown by Kansas City, and Willie Wood, a Packers Hall of Famer, and another DB is in pursuit. And there's the halftime. It's not Justin Timberlake or any of these high flying acts. It's looks like high school cheerleaders
Local
sitting
band or
there
something.
waiting to
Yeah.
do their to go out with the pep band. So
Unbelievable.
I got that. That's my Super Bowl one. Here's a really neat one I have of Super Bowl two, of which, probably should have the Packers featured as they demolished, the Daryl LaMonica led Raiders. But this I thought was such a neat picture of him throwing to Hewitt Dixon in the flat there, and then, this is another one I wanted to share with you, which I just love. It's
Right
old
on.
Lynn Dawson from HBO Sports, and Super Bowl IV against Minnesota and Tulane University. So, I just feel that it's great to, for me, it's like a celebration of the greatest game, and why we watch and we root for our team to win, and to both of your credits, I mean, look, you're a Patriots fan. I mean, you suffered for all those years. You have 6 Super Bowls, and you have the Packers, the Lombardi dynasty, and that's something everyone always celebrates. So here's a few of some neat things. This is some of the tickets that I have, which are my treasures in the
Unbelievable.
collection here. This is the blue version of Super Bowl one, which I think it's known as, out of the 3 versions, white, gold, and blue. This is really the neatest looking of them all. There's only 5 of these in existence in full form, so this is one of the 5, and it took me a long time to get. And I met a guy out who lives outside of Pittsburgh. We drove and met at a rest area halfway, like in had lunch together with he and his friend, and talked for 2 hours. And he's a Oilers Titans fan, great baseball player, and his own right. And and it just so happened it took years, but I was able to get that. And then this is a stub that there's only 30 of these graded, but this is one of 2, the highest graded, PSA 6.
Wow. Wow.
And it actually, in any other non-PSA wacky year, this would be higher, because I was astounded. I bought this raw from a guy in um, Utah, and just over the past year. But it was buried in the listing for a program. And so if someone would have seen this in the listing prominent, it would have been snapped up in a second, but it was
Right.
buried in the listing of it. And I still wasn't sure it was going to be part of the thing, but I said, you know what, I'm going to ask questions later. And and it turned out it was just a great piece. And for you, Bob, especially, here's the rarest Super Bowl ticket to get in full. This is
Yeah.
the Super Bowl II, 1968 Packers. It's only authentic, but it doesn't matter. It's preserved. And then here's the one of the other most cherished of all, the Super Bowl III, which is the guarantee game, which is
Nice.
really a neat one to always look at. So those are my favorite. And then I would be remiss if I didn't take care of Jeff here. This is one
Here we
of the
go.
neatest Super Bowls. This is Brady's first. It's like the Sport Flicks card of the 90s. When you tilt it, you see a flag on the field,
Yeah.
right? And then you see the Lombardi trophy. And there's 5 different variations of the 2002 ticket. This particular one is the most rare. There's only 5 in
Wow.
Gem Mint 10. So during the
Wow.
Brady
Fourth,
hysteria, I bought it.
I always say fourth best day of my life. Marriage, kid 1, kid 2, Patriots win what I thought would be the only Super Bowl in my life. It
Yeah.
was the greatest day that I could ever remember.
Well, one other thing I'll share and ask any other questions you like, but as far as, the Super Bowl and the history of the game, I will say this, just as an NFL fan too, it has the name Lombardi for a reason because of what that man meant to the game. But if you have never gone to a game, one game, you need to go to Lambeau Field
Yep.
and watch a football game, stay there and visit the museum that they have in the stadium. That museum itself is worth the price of the entire trip. I could have
Yep.
spent an entire day in there, although I would have probably been flying home single, but it was, and believe me, I looked up and down at the Super Bowl one program and the Super Bowl two program that they had encased there. I know my Super Bowl one program's better than theirs, but darned if they don't have one of the nicest on the planet Super
Yeah.
Bowl two programs and tickets too. So, it is such an experience, and they have that Lombardi Trophy in a atrium that I think goes 3 floors high. It's
Right.
gigantic. It's such a beautiful place to visit and watch a game. So my wife and I did that. That's number one. That was number one on our bucket list for visiting football stadiums, and that's one of the things I
Yep.
want to do is tour all of them if I can. So we did that last fall, and that was just fantastic.
It's funny. The first time we ever went to Lambeau, after the game, we went to Fuzzy Thurston's bar and grill,
Yep.
and Fuzzy was still alive at the time. This was years ago. So we went there, and Fuzzy asked my wife and I where are we from, and we said Wallingford, Connecticut. Now he was using his voice box to
Yeah.
speak, and he said to us, "Packer fans are everywhere in the country." I've always said that, and I got a
Yeah.
beautiful picture of him with his arm around me, showing the rings and signed. And what an experience. And I'm like, I can't believe I'm talking to this guy at his bar. And, he says, sit. He says, have a drink, have some food, blah, blah, blah. So we sat there and it was great. And the other quick point about that, about Green Bay, I've been to a lot of stadiums in my lifetime, especially in New York. I never saw 60,000 people leave a stadium orderly, that there was no
Yeah.
slamming of the brakes, running the red lights or anything. You got
Yeah.
cross at the crosswalk. People waited for you. You got in your
Yeah.
car. You drove away. And I'm like saying, I've never experienced anything like this
Yeah.
at an NFL game before.
Yeah.
So
It truly is as you said, it is
unbelievable.
amazing how friendly the people are, and it still is small town USA. I mean, like we flew through
Yeah.
Chicago and we're beautiful, crystal clear day. We're going to all these farms and we get
Yeah,
to the airport, and the airport remind me of Raleigh, Durham when I
yeah,
went to
yeah, yeah,
school in 1985. I was
yeah.
like, there's nothing here, just like, it was amazing. But it's a great experience. And last tie-in I want to say on that was to the Pottsville Maroons. They have this display, and I was mentioning it to Steve Wolf in the Philly show. They have this glass mirror display of NFL history, the teams of the NFL, and it is so neat. It's like from the Smithsonian. They list every team and the history of when they played, and they have a colored line for it. And when it switches to another franchise, like for instance, the Titans to the New York Jets, And I immediately went and sought out if the Pottsville Maroons were there, and they were, absolutely. And
That's
they put
nice.
them down in the 20s, and you know, the line stops, of course, but they had their history on there. So I thought that that was kind of neat that you know, you guys do so much with the, you know, era that, you know, started it all, but you know, it's at least it's being captured by you know, the true football enthusiasts, which you know, are out there, and that was kind of neat, I thought.
Yeah,
That's
one
great.
tie-in with the book to that point, something I learned when researching the Maroons book that ties to the Packers is that, you know, Green Bay was kind of the model for those little towns that wanted to stick around in the NFL. And Pottsville had it in their minds that they were going to do what Green Bay did, which was, you know, turn the team over to the town, sell stock in the team, and become the Packers of the East, they called it. They tried that twice in Pottsville and could never get enough money raised, fan support to make it work. Lambeau came to town and kind of helped them think through how to make it happen. Like, what did Green Bay do? He was very supportive of it. They just couldn't get enough support to pull that off because they were trying to do the exact same thing. And maybe if they'd pulled it off, they'd still be around.
Yep, I agree with that. All right, I hate to do this, but we are literally out of time. We could talk for about 3 hours here on everything going
For
on.
sure.
Steve, I got to ask you real quick, advice for a beginning collector.
First and foremost, be true to your core principles of collecting. Decide what makes you happy, what you really enjoy collecting, not the hottest ticket of the day, the Panini Prism parallel with the, you know, pink, whatever it is. Choose, you know, collecting your favorite player, your team, whatever it is that makes you happy, where you truly enjoy assembling a set or a collection of, and stick to it. And then also be open-minded. You know, your collecting interests will change over time, and you know, don't be afraid to branch out a little bit too. So that would be my advice. And always collect what you like the most, and you will enjoy the hobby. If you're always looking to, you know, make a quick flip or a buck, it's you know, it's a short-lived game. And you know, the one that you know, will always stay tried and true is something that you could always pick up and enjoy looking at and sharing with friends or family. So that's my advice.
Great advice. Great advice. Well, like I said, we could talk for a few more hours here, but we're pretty much out of time. Steve, thank you very much for being on. What a great collection. And again, it's in our new issue. Your collection featured as a super collector with a nice cover of the 72 Sunoco stamps. So again, if anyone's watching and you're not subscribed to Gridiron Greats magazine, what are you waiting for? Check out our website, gridirongreatsmagazine.com. Jeff, a real abbreviated 2-minute warning. I'm handing off to you. What'd you pick up on tonight's show?
Yeah, I love listening to Steve talk about what he collects. I mean, some collectors are very kind of, you know, try to get it all at a high level, kind of like me. Then there's people like Steve, man, when they get into something, they just take it all the way to the ground. And I could listen to Steve talk about what he collects forever, and the stuff you have put together and the depth of your knowledge about those subjects is just incredible. I really like what you're doing, and it's so much fun to talk to you about it.
Thanks. I appreciate being able to be on with you too, and share it with you.
And Steve, you pointed out 1972. That was the biggest set ever at that time. 624 individual stamps, the 82 stamp update. What a collection to collect at that time. And again, I was not as fortunate because we only had one Sunoco station in the area. And my father really never bought gas there. He would buy the gas in town.
Sure.
And the handful of times I went there, with him, and I was pleading with the guy to give me a couple, more packs of the stamps, and he says, "I'm sorry, I can only give out one pack each person because we don't have a lot of them. I said, okay.
Yeah.
And I only had a couple of packs, and over the years, as the years went on, I ended up picking up several albums, both the deluxe and the smaller album complete. Not in any pristine condition, but just to see them is just an incredible collection of stamps and of players of that time. It's truly amazing, truly amazing.
I'll share one last one with you here. This is the Roger Staubach. That was his rookie year. But so I said there were 73 Pro Football Hall of Famers in that set, including the update and many pre-rookies in that too that people don't know about, like Mel Blount, for instance, who didn't appear on a Topps card till 75. So yeah, it's a neat set to collect, and there is plenty of unopened material still out there if one wanted to do so.
Right. It's an amazing. Their print run had to have been incredible. That's all I could say.
Yeah.
I mean, to see them still in 2025 available, it just amazes me, to say the least. All right, we're out of time. Thanks for watching. We'll be back hopefully soon with another podcast in a few weeks. Until then, we'll see you then. Take care.
There.
Everybody.